What is the secret to unlocking your full potential? What makes your idols any different than you? How do you become the person you've always wanted to be in life? This is where you get all of your questions answered. My name is Justin Shank, and I sit down with some of the most epic individuals who are changing the world with their actions in business and in life. We discuss how they did it, why they pushed themselves, and more importantly, how they were able to focus on continuous growth to achieve their dreams. Welcome to the Growth Now movement. This week, I sit down with Lance and Brandy Salazar. This episode is a can't miss for anyone who's looking to have a legendary marriage or relationship. You see, Lance and Brandy found themselves, like most couples, unhappy, on different pages, and ready to get a divorce. Then one day, Brandy walked into the front door and said to Lance, "Not only are we not getting a divorce, but we're going to create the most amazing marriage that we possibly can." And then the work began. Now, they're co-authors to the Miracle Morning for Couples, founders of Legendary Couples, and helping people all over the world heal their broken relationships. From the crazy stories of leaving it all behind to focus on the relationship, to building a following, to being true and honest, unlike so many people in the relationship influencer space, you guys are going to fall in love with these two. And I absolutely love this conversation, and I know you guys are going to love it too. Now, before we get there, I have a question for you. Are you having trouble building your business? Have you plateaued with your business and don't know what to do next? I truly think the mastermind that I run, the Purpose and Movement Mastermind, is the perfect place for you. We're helping individuals just like you take their purpose and turn it into a movement and a successful business. And now it's your turn. Head to purposeandmovement.com, fill out the form, and hop on a call to get more information on how we're able to help you and guide you with every little piece that you need to put together to create the life you truly desire. Now, without further ado, let's get to the episode with Lance and Brandy Salazar. Lance and Brandy, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Thanks, Justin.
Yeah, we were talking before I hit record, probably for way too long, but we talked about how our circles have always connected and this has just never happened. So I'm really excited about the conversation because I've watched you guys over, it sounds so creepy, but I've watched you guys over the last couple of years and what you're building and your messaging and how you're trying to shape what relationships need to be. And you're doing it in the right way, and I love that. So why don't we take a second now and have you guys introduce who you are today, and then we'll break down how you got there.
Ooh, great question. Go ahead.
So I'm Brandy. I'm married to Lance, and I would call myself a homeschool mom entrepreneur, and that's kind of a unique, lonely space, to be honest. Right? Like we're very intentional about how we homeschool our kids, and it's at home. And then I also, run a business. We run a business together. And so it's a really unique time.
Yeah. I would say that, who we are today are a very connected couple. I really consider Brandy my priority. And of course my kids too, but when I make her my number one, then everything tends to fall into place, if that makes sense. So Who we are today are a very intentional and connected couple. And, we just like to help others, go down the same path we're going on.
Yeah. Or the one that works for them, but leads to connection.
True.
Yeah, and I love that. And so, you guys talk about, having this business together and that's a whole thing in itself, like couples that work together. Plus you guys are probably home all the time. Right? Because
all
you're
the time
homeschooling, like you're not going to an office anywhere. You're constantly together. So that's a whole topic we can dive into. But let's talk a little bit about before you guys. I mean, I know the whole thing. You guys escaped. You guys, moved, sold the business, did all the things. Let's talk about that a little bit and talk about the journey from where you were and how the world would say you guys were successful, but you guys were like, this is not success. This is not happiness. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So, Lance and I, when we met, we were both successful. Lance was managing a pharmacy department, right? What were you doing? Can you explain that? Yeah.
I was working for a health plan. I'm a pharmacist by trade, but I was working more in a corporate pharmacy environment.
Yeah. And so he was running a hospital at the time, and I was the president of a flipping company, or it was commercial development at the time. And so when we met, we had our careers. And so we were able to incorporate our relationship with our careers, and it worked. And we had a good time together, and we decided to get married. We fell in love, and everything was pretty lovely until we had kids. And I think the big struggle that we had that's very similar to a lot of couples is when you have a life together that already feels full, even fulfilled, but still full. And then you add these humans to take care of, like time is, one of the first issues. And so when you start to prioritize, our relationship got deprioritized.
Yeah, I don't think we really had anybody really shared with us, nor was there really a great handbook on how couples manage to continue to make their marriage a priority while trying to raise babies
and have careers and keep the house clean.
I mean, maybe there were books, but nobody shared them with me. So.
No, me neither. Yeah. And so the problem is that, especially for me, and, I worked for myself and was able to make a lot of my own decisions and have a lot of freedoms when it came to work. And so for me, freedom is a big core value. And I also had a really lovely, robust ego. And so there were a lot of accolades and things like that. And so for me, it was really easy to stay in the flow of building the business and building it bigger and, getting all those brownie points on that side. And so my marriage at the time was, taking work, and he wasn't giving me the same accolades. And these little kids are really bad at it. Right? So,
Mom, you're so great at work.
Right? Yeah, but where's my juice?
Yeah, seriously.
It's like I always think of that. What's that movie where he goes, Meatloaf?
Meatloaf. What is Wedding Crash? That's from Wedding Crash.
Yes, yeah. Wedding Crashers, Will Ferrell.
That's what I think about kids sometimes.
Yeah,
it's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I shared with you guys that I'm now dating a girl. We live together. She has 2 kids. And so if we had this conversation a year ago, I wouldn't or a year plus ago, I wouldn't understand anything that you're saying. Like I'd be like, yeah, whatever. Like, kids are kids and this, and you got to juggle it. But now I know, and I get it. Like it's very, and look, I stepped in when they were older, 9 and 7, where they could, they wipe their own butts. So there were things where like my time isn't completely removed, but attention is. Right. Mm-hmm. And so they constantly want and need attention, and I love giving it to them. But I know that I have to take a step back at all times and pay attention to my girlfriend as well. Like there's this whole juggle. And I only know this from having conversations because of the podcast. So I've been a little bit more self-aware of those things. But if you've never been told that and never
nobody tells you that.
Yeah, never. And it's so important. So what was the big aha moment for you guys to be like, we need to make a change?
Well, the change originally started off with, hey, Lance, it's time for you to move out. So Brandy, I think, had made this decision that the change was to no longer be together. Mm. And so that sort of rocked my world. I mean, I think I knew at the time that she was feeling this way, for years, at least since the second daughter was born.
We started counseling the first time when our first daughter was 1.5 years.
Yeah. So there was a lot of underpinnings of the relationship not going so well. But there did come a time when a big, massive change was decided to be made, mostly by Brandy. But I think that was a big, it's a whole other side conversation. But I think her asking me to move out was a big gift, looking back on it. But that was the decision, the big change was for me to go.
That was the pivotal moment.
Yeah, the pivotal moment. Time for you to go.
Yeah, so. I need you to find a place to go. You can stay in another room in the house, and this is what this is going to look like, Yeah. And so having that conversation, we coach couples, right? We have this conversation a lot where people are in these situations where change isn't happening, this isn't working. And so if you have both parties involved, transformation is quite easy if both people are committed and ready to do the work. But if one party's not committed to do the work, someone has to throw down sometimes. And that's really what I look at that as, is an ultimatum. And I was serious, and he knew I was serious. And so that sparked something in him that was already going on in me. And so we had this separation in our relationship with me being deeply into personal growth for a lot of years. I mean, teaching personal growth. And then he just was not. He was in the corporate world. Things were status quo, but yet he wasn't happy. And so what that did was that pushed him into personal growth as a necessity.
Yeah, and I think what a lot of people, and Justin, I'm sure you've talked to a lot of people that would have a similar story. Truthfully, when I peeled back the onion or looked at my relationship, I had to get behind the idea that I was the common denominator. I was, I had to look at my own challenges here, that if we were separated and I didn't like myself, I had to come to my own truth of realizing I don't feel like I'm the person I was before. I had a lot of loss of self. I wasn't confident. I lost my mojo, but that was showing even at work. And I said I had to have this radical transformation to get back to, but also step into the man, husband, father that I really wanted to be, or at least at that moment, the man and the father I wanted to be, because I wasn't sure that I was still going to be a husband for any length of time.
Yeah. I love where we're at right now, because obviously this is the growth now movement. So we talk about personal growth. We talk about those moments of like, okay, I've got a choice right now. I either go down this path or I go down this path. And obviously, Lance, you were at least self-aware enough to say, okay, I need to do something to change all this stuff around me because I wasn't doing it right. Right. So what was the difference between you in that moment and somebody else in that moment who goes, no, screw you, you're wrong, I'm out? What do you think the difference was?
The big difference was that I just recognized and acknowledged the fact I wasn't happy with myself, right? And the only person that was going to fix that was going to be me. I had at least enough wherewithal to realize that Brandy wasn't, we'd been married for 10 years. So obviously she hadn't fixed me herself in those 10 years. And I needed to do that for myself. There were a lot of concepts and ideas I had to get behind, the idea of creating my own happiness, having control over my own self, that attachment leads to suffering. There were all these sort of ideas, but at the core of it all was recognizing that if I stepped out of this relationship and did nothing, I was bringing the same guy to the next one. So, you can always point blame and point the finger, and a lot of people do that. That's a huge, indicator of marriages and relationships that start to crumble and fall apart. But when we have that, like you said, self-awareness, when you finally take and acknowledge and accept the fact that you're 100% responsible for those things in yourself, you can make a radical shift by simply just taking some action on that, with that as an underlying theme. So,
as the foundation.
As the foundation, thank you.
Yeah. Now, as couples, and this is a theme that comes up a lot. I don't even know why it comes up a lot. When I bring up relationships on this podcast, they do talk about like your own self-development. Right. And they talk about you need to work on yourself and you can't force your partner to do it. But obviously the growth together is super important. Right. And that's kind of where you guys are at. Right. So Brandy, you're already on this path. You're teaching this path. Lance, you're like, oh, shit, I don't know what I'm doing. I got to figure this out. And so you start to figure it out. But what is it about you guys? Obviously, you're on different trajectories no matter what. I think because you're individuals. Right. Yes, so how do you bring together both? Your own personal journeys and then your growth journey as a couple? Like, how are you able to do that? Because I think that's a missing piece for so many people.
Well, I think there's a little bit of a two-step process here too, Justin, because we do get this question a lot. And, I belong to a couple of dads groups, and the question that tends to come up again are like, okay, I'm in this dads group. I'm totally doing all this stuff. I'm growing. I'm reading books, I'm running. I'm working out. I'm meditating. I'm not as angry all the time, but my wife isn't doing anything. And I'm sure that you could totally flip, like that was our story. That's what she was doing, and I was doing nothing. And I think, the big indicator here is that a lot of these guys are, they start to get into personal growth and personal development, and they're doing it all for themselves. Now, personal growth and development is in a lot of ways for yourself, but when you're married to somebody and have family too, if you can figure out a way to understand that you winning is them winning too, then I think that's a big shift. So a lot of these guys are doing their own thing, and their wives are like, well, I'm not involved. Well, I'm feeling left behind. I feel like you're getting, abs and pecs, and I'm not, and you're doing it all for yourself. And there's, either or they nag them to try to change. They try to push them into change. They give that, what they call first order change. I think they call it like, if you need to do this or else, like ultimatums.
Right. Instead of from a place of servant leaders.
Yeah.
Servant leadership.
I remember when I first started meditating, Justin, and I like this story because it was a big shift for me. Andy is the guy that, his voice is like, it's just entrenched in my brain because it was the first one I did a lot of meditating with. Headspace, yeah, Headspace guy. About the third meditation I was in, he said, now remember who you're doing this for. And suddenly the light bulb clicked on. I'm like, this is for me, but this is for them too. And if I can remember that when I win, they win too, then there's no stopping us. There's no stopping me.
Right. So if you're working out to be healthier for your family and show up more fully in your marriage, and you're reading things to be a better person for your family and show up better, right? You see where I'm going with this? Yeah. If that's part of the why, and that why is tied in, this is where I messed up big time, Justin. Like, I was growing because I had this, inner child ego that was starving, that needed food. And I'm like literally just feeding it with, I'm doing this because I'm awesome. Look at me. I'm awesome. I'm awesome. And not because, I'm going to meditate today, or I'm going to, grow the business by X or whatever it may be for my family, having my why be my family. We hear so often, I'm doing this for them. And with money, especially, I'm doing this for them. Well, if you ask them what they want, do you think they want time with you? Do they want patient time with you? They want present time with you? Or do they want a bigger house and more stuff, right? Yeah. What is it that if you're really doing it for them? So when it comes to this whole personal growth conversation, being really clear on our why and having a shared vision for what we're doing and where we're going together, it doesn't matter where we're growing because we're growing in the same direction. It doesn't matter if he's here, I'm here, but right, we move and when you're in a relationship that is connected to the level that we are now, and so many other people are, we're not the only ones, right? When I'm higher than he is, I'm pulling him up, right? I'm encouraging him. I'm his biggest cheerleader. I'm his biggest fan. And so he's coming with me. I'm not going alone. Come on, buddy. We got to go. Like, I see what's going on and I feel you and I'm here for you, because the other piece to that is now a deep knowing. I know when he's fallen off. I know when he's not feeling his best, right? And so that's where the difference clicks in from where we were to where we are today.
And that other piece really quick I want to add to that Brandy and I do is once we, just jumping forward a little bit to us deciding we were going to stay together because we started to like the individuals we were growing into. I started to like myself. So then Brandy started to care about me again and vice versa. And we decided, well, now how are we going to grow this marriage? How are we going to directionalize the marriage? How are we going to make sure that we're just not just growing individually, yes, but that we can intentionally create the time and energy and planning and goals and dreaming so that we can move the relationship and move it forward, create direction.
Right. Like it's its own living, breathing thing. And that's, I think, the piece that people forget. Our relationship together, right? It creates those like 3 circle units, right? The center piece of all, there's other pieces to it. And it's a living, breathing thing that needs its own attention.
Right. No, and I love that. And I know like that's a lot of the stuff you're helping couples with legendary couples and all this other stuff. And we're going to get to that. But, when I look at what you guys did, right, you felt like you were at this rock bottom moment. Brandy says, Lance, get out. Lance begins this incredible journey. And then all of a sudden you go, hey, we're starting to like ourselves, which means we like each other. How did you have that conversation to say, okay, this isn't enough quite yet. We need to then set this future trajectory. Does that make sense? How did you even begin to have that conversation?
Well, that's a God thing. This is a faith, and that's the only thing I can really come up with on this. At the time, a friend and I were working on this project for a millionaire women's mastermind group. And she and I had coffee scheduled, and we're sitting down and we're having this conversation. And she says, the current group that we are expanding is a men's group currently, and we were going to create the women's group. And she says, I'd really like it to be a co-ed group. And I'm like, nah, I'm cool in co-ed, Long story short, we take a deep dive into that. And she looks at me and says, she's like, we're not here. The organization's called GoBundance. She's like, we're not here to talk about GoBundance. We're here to talk about something else. And I'm on my third marriage. And so I think we need to talk about what the reality is of going through this. And when you have two wonderful people, I never said that my husband wasn't a wonderful guy, and so she walked me through it and said a couple of things that got me really good. And one was that I get to continue and take myself into the next relationship. And that if he is the kind of guy that attracts intense, badass women, he's going to attract another one. And that gets to be the stepmom to your children and your co-parent. So I was like, oh, wait a minute. Is that true? Is he going to do it again? He's going to, I can't deal with another one of me. So just being totally transparent, that was one of the things that triggered me. I was like, oh,
for sure.
And she, she really talked about, she's like, this is a lifelong journey. This is a marathon. Like, you have to put the work in. You're going to put the work in somewhere. You already have kids. What you're talking about that isn't working can be fixed. You just need to put the time in. And so between that and the current coach that I had at the time that was showing me some really interesting shadow sides of my ego, and where I was emasculating my husband with my masculine energy and not understanding my own personal feminine energy. Those two things, it just clicked at this coffee. And I walked in, you were home, and I said, we're not getting a divorce. We're not. We're going to fix this. We're going to make this awesome. We use the word legendary now, thanks to Chris Luckhead. But at the time, it was, we're just going to, because here's the thing, like, he's in the health industry. He's a health coach. I'm a business coach. I've built businesses. I understand what it takes to make something great. And it takes a clear vision, a realistic strategic plan, and taking massive action. And we had never done that in our relationship. And we started that day.
Yeah, I think we wanted to get out of, we didn't want to fall into the old patterns of the cycles of things being good, not good, good, not good, good, not good. And we're like, no, we're done with that. I mean, do we have little challenges, and I don't want to call them setbacks, but do we have moments Absolutely. Where we're not like, yeah, sure, but that's where the growth happens. But I think before, we were in this cycle of like, it was just like a roller coaster all the time. And we're like, we're done with this. We want to move forward. How do we create goals and plan and dream and move this thing forward?
Right. So that was the pivotal moment for us, was just, faith bringing that person across the table from me. Because if I didn't sit across the table from her in that moment, I don't know if it would have been the same story. Right. And that's where faith comes in.
Yeah, no, for sure. And like you said, by chance, you were there to talk about something completely different.
Not even close. We didn't even end up talking about the subject.
But GoBundance does exist, so
it does. Yeah, and the women's does exist now, and we're just not part of it.
I love it. That's amazing. Yeah, and it's so true. I think there's moments in everybody's life where you had a choice at that moment too, to say, forget this. Like, I'm just going to continue to go down this path, or hey, I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to listen. And there was a reason you listened, and I believe for you guys, that's Legendary Couples and what you're working on with that platform. So let's talk a little bit about that. Where did that come from, and why did you want to take what you guys have learned in your relationship and start teaching others?
Well, people asked. I think one of the things Brandy was challenged with, and she could probably explain this better than I could, but at the time when things were not going well in our relationship, she was fed up with portraying the fact that everything was going well in our relationship. She's like, if people are looking at Facebook or Instagram, she's like, we look like this perfect married couple, and that we're doing everything right, and we've got the fancy house and the cute kids and all, all this fancy shit. And she's like, I'm so fed up with this. That's not who we are. Where this relationship sucks. I want you to leave, but people think it's all great,
I hated it.
And she hated that.
I was like, we got to just be honest. We got to start saying, wait a minute, wait, our marriage sucks.
And so, but then things started to actually turn around.
And quickly.
And Brandy was starting to actually post that she actually loved me, but authentically, right? Not this like bullshit,
He's a good dad.
Yeah.
So,
he's so great.
So when that right, exactly. So we started to turn that around, and people, just because we were authentically sharing about the trials and tribulations of our relationship, people were like,
wait, me too.
Yeah. Us too. I think it gave people permission to raise their hand and say, us too. Can you tell us what you did? And so we got this. It was so hilarious because we're like, I don't know. What do we do?
Really know we did.
What did we do?
Yeah.
We just kind of, so we did do things that's, but we didn't have it like formulated. So we had this sliding glass door at our old house, and we just started putting Post-its up, boom, 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 just all the stuff we'd done, things that work that may or that didn't work, but maybe would work for somebody else. Just all this sort of these ideas and categories and whatever else. And suddenly we started to move the Post-it notes around, and we had these 4 elements that we came up with: you, partners, friends, and lovers, because we needed a way to try and teach it to people.
And we needed to understand for ourselves.
Yes, we had to explain it, and how are we going to stay down this path? How are we going
to keep the momentum?
Right. How are we going to organize these thoughts and ideas and actions and habits and whatever else?
What was the model?
Right. What was the model? So it was born by accident. Truth be told, Justin, as a pharmacist, I'm like, I'm not a relationship coach. Everything was still black and white with me, right? To be a pharmacist, I need a license, I need a degree. And so I felt that helping couples with their relationships was reserved for those that were like a licensed therapist, all these people with credentials. And here I am, just some dude that had a shitty marriage that we fixed it, so who am I, so I actually resisted. And you talk about faith in God and universe and whatever else that, Brandy mentioned, it was really like a tug, like a knocking, on my head, really, like, you need to do this. People need your help. And so in some ways it was rather accidental, really.
It was accidental. And then you have on my side a high school dropout that had not only developed 7- and 8-figure businesses, but had been coaching people on them. And I'm like, oh no, once you figure something out, people need to know this. You just package it, then you talk to them, and then you tell them the steps, and they do it.
I'm like, just tell them to send them to a therapist, man, because I'm just me.
Like, no, we've been to therapists. We've been doing this for so long, and it wasn't working. And yes, therapy is wonderful. We're big proponents of it, but there's sometimes another step when therapists haven't been coach trained, right? Because coaching is moving you forward, and we need to help people move forward, right? And so that's how it started.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the key part is, you guys did the work first. You truly built your foundation, as you were saying earlier, and then that's what led to the coaching. And we were talking a little bit before I hit record about some other couples out in the couple space, what I don't even know what you guys call it, relationship space, who was very fraudulent, right? And it was very like, hey, we're the perfect couple, we're this, and we're talking about Rachel and Dave Hollis. But the reality is, like, so here's the crazy thing, right? So I was sitting on a couch the one night with my girlfriend, and I looked at Rachel's page and I go, oh, they're getting a divorce. Now, I'm friends with their friends. Like, it's a very small world once you get into the podcast space and like this crazy thing. And everybody was showing support. And I'm like, wait, hold on a second. They are literally preaching how to be the perfect couple to the world. And they just announced they're getting a divorce. And I scrolled back, and about 7 posts before that, probably about 3 weeks before that, she talked about, hey, you want the perfect relationship? We talk about how we're the perfect relationship on this week's podcast. You need to check it out. And that scares me a little bit when we're living in the space of these coaches who are trying to teach you how to do it, and they're not even doing it. And so you guys built this foundation, and you really began to coach people in the way you did it because you went through the pain, right? And so one thing I say all the time is that our open wounds are for us to learn from, and then our scars are for other people to learn from that, right?
That's
and so you
I
guys,
love that.
Yeah. So you guys got the scar, and now you're teaching, right? You're like, this is why I have this, right? And it's here to teach you a lesson. And so what do you have to say to that? And how are you combating this space of these people who have millions of followers and are saying the wrong thing? What are you guys doing to, I don't want to say combat because that's not the right word, but what are you guys doing to stand up in this space right now?
Honestly, it's just keep doing what we're doing. And if you're going to ask stand up in the space, like, we have not done a great job of standing up for this bucket of our lives. Honestly, like, we do not have a huge platform. We still see clients one-on-one. But we're staying consistent in our priorities and our beliefs and our core values first. That's the piece for us where, I struggle speaking to other people's situations a lot. It's because I do still feel the heart space. I feel the heart space of what Dave and Rachel are going through. But I was the one with the 7-figure career that didn't see my kids as often and had that life, right? And I saw what it did to my marriage. I saw what it did to my parenting. And so in some ways, I'm on the other side of what happened in their relationship. And so we're now at a place where we're 5 years in to I mean, we sold everything to be able to be very intentional about, I mean, our business. He left his job. I left a 15-year, very successful, lucrative career. We sold our multi-million-dollar house and all the stuff to live in a 70-year-old farmhouse and homestead, homeschool our children. Like, we chose to really walk before we talk. And that's what we're doing that's different. And so if anything sacrifices, it's really our business. It's really our platform. And like, you'll see gaps of no social media for us because we're going through something with the kids, or we're going through, I had a health scare last year, going through something with my health, because when we made the shift came from, what are our priorities? What is the order of those priorities? And if we say that faith and marriage and our kids are at the top, does our calendar, right, for lack of a better term, reflect that?
Right. The things like the social media stuff just goes away, because this might sound like a selfish thing to say, Justin, but at the beginning, when Brandy asked me to move out, I didn't say to myself, I'm going to fix myself and my marriage so that I can sell others on how to do it as well. And I still, so like even today, it's like, sure, that's what we do. We help other couples. But if things like get crazy like COVID, we're not going to,
we went underground when COVID started.
Listen, there are some great couples that do what we do, that stuck with it and were able to still push social media out. It just wasn't us. We didn't feel that. We felt like doing that too much was going to sacrifice our relationship. And so we do this for us first, right? And if we can help others, then that's awesome too. But I don't think there's an agenda per se. I don't know. Am I putting that right?
You are. And I think that's, but I will say this, to people listening, that is a sacrifice though. Like, do we want to be helping more couples? Absolutely, especially right now, you guys. Like, we know couples are struggling. We know this is a funky time, that you've probably never experienced the challenges that you're having in your marriage right now. We should be out there more. And we're gearing up and regaining our footing as we speak. Like you were just saying before the call, like you're in a underground, like rebuilding phase. So are we, because we know that we are being called right now. It's time for us to rise up and really support couples, because we know what to do. We know how to do it. And not to say that everybody's going to be able to do it, but we know what to tell people and help people to do right now.
Yeah, no. And it's true. And I love the fact that you guys went back to your core values, right? Like, what are they? And are we actually staying true to them? And so often when people are chasing after money or an Instagram following or whatever they're chasing, those core values can very quickly go out the window, right?
They do.
So and I asked you this beforehand, and I'll bring it back up because I think it's important. There are a lot of people that listen to my show who are looking to build a platform to go off and help other people, right? And that's kind of where the core of my audience is. And so when I look at this and I go, well, they're hearing this and they're seeing, Rachel, well, whatever, the Hollises that weren't telling the truth. And there's many other people too, and we can go down a list, and I'm not going to do that. But, this fraudulent kind of lifestyle to build a platform, but they have huge followings. So what do you feel like people need to be a little fake in order to grow that following? Are you guys now out here to prove like, no, there's a reality to this, and we can build a big platform based off of the reality of life?
I don't know the answer to that in the marriage space, because as much as there's moments where we feel like it's saturated and we're coming into a saturated space, it's not as saturated as we think. There really aren't a lot of people in the space. The only thing I can model after is in people in other spaces. There are people in other spaces that have rose through being authentic. We were just talking about a future guest that you have, JP Sears, right? He's one of them. Look what's happening. Did he have a slower grow? Maybe, but Rachel had a slower grow. She did. If you really look at her timeline, the amount that she did to get to the place that she was a slow grow. And so I believe the answer is yes, you can authentically do it. I think we're also living in a time and space. It's going to be required. We are all tired. COVID is knocking the wind out of every single person on this planet, and we don't have the time and space for not authentic. We crave it. We have to have it. If we're going to develop and feel like we're in community virtually right now, we're going to follow people that we feel are authentic. I think it's a time and space for authentic people to rise more than ever, honestly.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's kind of where I'm at. And we talked about that a little bit too, right? Like, although I'm very, very authentic and real, there's moments that I don't share, and there's moments that aren't fully healed, and there's all these things, right? And so that's just kind of the reality. And so I like talking to somebody else where they go, look, it's time to take a step back, reevaluate, and really do the work that we need to do in order to then continue to serve other people. And I love that. And so what are some of the things that you guys are putting into place now to impact more individuals?
Such a good question. So you know about the practice I do in the morning with Mark?
I don't.
Mark Crandall.
Okay. Yeah, Mark Crandall. Sorry. It's a prayer meditation practice where you pray, like, God, what do you have for me today? You meditate, and then you write down anything that comes up. It can be random stuff, super weird, right? And then you're like, I don't even know what that means. But over time, I'm on day 60 today, actually. That's a big deal, right? So day 60, yeah, it is huge. Well, over the last couple of weeks, as this whole thing has been unfolding, and we're getting our bearings, something really big came up for me, and it's building a team. Now, mind you, I had a fairly large team when I had the investment company, and as things unfolded and we went into this lifestyle, I had to lay people off as we closed the doors, and it caused a really big scar that I didn't realize until my morning meditation the other day, that I had fear, right, of building another team and having it not work, right? When you employ people and you are impacting people's livelihood, there's a lot of fear, right? So for people that want to scale and impact a lot of people, we can't do it alone. I can't do all the things, right? And so it's like back to the authentic part. I need to be able to stay authentic and not exhausted from learning Facebook ads and Instagram ads to be able to reach more and more people, right? I'm not great at copy. I need somebody to support me with more detailed copy, and long story short, it's building a team. And that's literally where we're at right now, is bringing people on to help us in the areas so we can stay in our lane and create content and create the parts of the product that, other people can run with.
We've been working on 3 courses to launch since before COVID.
Since February.
And then COVID hit. Yeah. And it's just been really slow with the kids being at home all the time and, trying to put all of those things together.
Having no extracurricular activities.
Right. Because we were trying to learn the Facebook ads, the courses, the funnels, all the things. And we're like, this is so overwhelming. And the kids are, breathing down our necks.
Right. But anybody that gets our product, they're like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I needed right now. This is so great. We're like, we just need to get the products to more people, but that can't be our lane. And so that was the big aha moment, is we can't bootstrap this whole thing. This is a season where we need to get the right people on the bus to be able to just grow it, reach more people.
Yeah. No, and it's crazy that you talk about too, that morning practice of, you essentially ask, like, what am I supposed to receive? And you meditate and receive it. And that's actually what I was talking about, was like going underground and reestablishing how I'm putting out this message was through a meditation. Just the other day, I said, because I have a dear friend who is a psychic and medium and all these things. And he's like, dude, yeah, you meditate from time to time. He's like, but you don't ever ask for anything. I'm like, I thought meditation was to clear my mind. He's like, no, he's like, you got to ask. And I started asking, and I started getting answers, right? Like I was telling you guys how I'm trying to pull off an event in September, and your eyes got really big. But I was told in a meditation that I'm supposed to make it happen. And so like, okay, well, that's what I'm getting called to do. And you start to follow these things, but it makes it such a clear kind of journey, right? And then I go down this path and I get my yes or no, and that's huge. And I'm really, really big on practices people put into their life to create the success that they need, right? I believe consistency and being dedicated to your craft is something that's extremely important. So my question for you guys, what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
Well, I know the one we do for our marriage, and that's our morning routine that we do called Team, TEAM.
That's the one we did with the Miracle Morning book.
Yeah, Miracle Morning for Couples, which which is touch. We always, this is for us as a couple, touch, education, appreciation. That's a huge one. If couples could do one thing for each other, is to appreciate each other.
While touching.
Yeah, while touching is great too, right?
That's what I would say. Because you could do it one thing. You could literally just be like, I appreciate that you brought me my coffee yesterday. Thank you so much. Imagine if a couple did that every single day.
Oh, yeah. It
right?
changes everything. Yeah.
So every morning, check in with your relationship. Or do, ours is team. It's 4 steps. Super easy. You can do it in 5 minutes.
What's the fourth? What's the M?
A meeting.
Oh, meeting.
It's a little bit of a check-in,
Yeah.
It can be a few things. It could be, when we first started doing it, it was kind of checking in on how we were showing up as how I was showing up as a husband, how she was showing up as a wife.
How did we do yesterday? How
are things going? Anything we need to plus minus,
Pivot.
Change.
The consistency of doing that, asking that question, takes the emotion out of it, because it's every day. And so you're not like, well, you didn't do this and then this and then no, it's you get yourself out of that loop. And instead you get to the point of, hey, you know what? No, that part didn't work. So let's do this better tomorrow or today. That's it.
Grace,
super quick.
being grace, having grace and being guinea pigs. Brandy and I have often tried doing certain things as a couple, realizing we're just trying something out. I think a lot of couples get involved in like, this has to work for us. If it doesn't work, then, it's like,
no, you throw it out. It's called a try list.
Right. It's just a try list. Anyhow, so M for meeting has also evolved into us now, just simply, laying the foundations for the day. What's going on today? When do the kids have practice?
When's UPS coming to pick up?
When's the UPS coming to pick up the package?
Yeah, that UPS thing is super important.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so that neither one of us are surprised by, what's happening or what's coming up.
Who's dropping off at soccer? Who's picking up? Like all of that. Just the basics, to just do another quick check-in, because we do that on Sundays for the whole week. But each morning, life gets going, right?
And you forget.
Yeah.
Hey,
so our relationship practice every day, and we started how we got to writing the Miracle Morning book was being, practitioners of the Miracle Morning. And the 2 main ones for me, which was, part of where this practice that I do with Mark now is so impactful, was prayer and meditation. And I always did it, and I did it separate. And then, adding that with the journaling, I will say in 60 days, it has been the most impactful, other than the Miracle Morning routine, that I've done in my entire life. Like it's shifting everything. So, but those were things that I did anyway, separate. My third one is gratitude.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say meditation, prayer, and gratitude are 3 things that, I've missed 1 day of meditation in the last 300 days because, and all of it together, I do it all together. So, it's a really, really big deal for me. Really big deal.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I feel like routine is just something that becomes so important to our sanity as well, right? Like, so you're not,
Absolutely.
I don't understand people who don't have any routines. And I'm like, I think there's one person on my show who's like, I don't have any routines. He kind of laughed at me. It's Bert Kreischer, who's a comedian. And he's like, essentially his whole thing.
He's a unicorn.
Like, yeah. He just, he's insane actually. But, it's one of those things where it creates so much structure for you to reach your goals, for you to continue doing everything that you're doing, which I love what you guys do together. I think that's huge. And they'll hear it in the beginning, but like you guys being part of the Miracle Morning family is insane on its own, right? And now you guys are just building off of that, which I absolutely love. And so what would you say that you guys teach to other couples? What would you say is the most important thing for them to start to begin to repair their relationship?
Understand the elements. The 4 elements. That is the most important thing, to understand how to properly build the foundation of your relationship, because most people that come to us come with one of the questions that you just said a minute ago, like, how do I get my partner to grow, or how do I get my partner to do this? How do I get my partner, whatever. That, or we're not intimate enough. It's intimacy. That's the thing, but really the foundation has to be built from the bottom up, and, intimacy comes at the end, right?
Yeah, and those 4 elements, you, partners, friends, and lovers. We talk about it a lot. It really becomes the framework or the backbone to everything we really teach, because it's a good place to ground or to center on, so that you can create, that success path or that, So you can put
an intentional one
right.
that actually works. Like that's the difference, because all you sit down and talk about is how much more intimacy you're going to have over the next 6 months. That is one small piece of the overall pie of your relationship. And it's not going to give you what you really want in the end. And that's a holistic, connected relationship.
Yeah, I've had a lot of guys that will complain about their marriage, and then everything will be fine because they had this great night of sex last night. And I'm like, that's wonderful. I don't think you should ever stop having sex, even if your relationship isn't the greatest. But a lot of them will look at that as a reason that the marriage is now good again, right?
Until about 3 days later.
Yeah, and all shit's breaking loose.
Yeah, that's the cycle we see. So the most important thing is to understand the relationship elements. They're the foundation. Like you have to understand what comes first, who's on first, So,
yeah, and would you say that it should be taken care of in that order?
Yes.
Absolutely. 100% it is in that order. Because let's just think about this real quick. If you have one of the people, this foundation is the 2 U's, right? And so if you have one of those people that are struggling, right, with their confidence, with their mental health, physical health, they're not holding up the foundation of what comes next, which is the partnership. If you're not properly taking care of your finances, your household, your children, things like that, are you feeling like you're friends and want to be intimate? No, right? Then friendship comes, deep knowing, being present with each other, having fun with each other, just like we did in the very beginning when we were dating. And that's when intimacy starts to spark naturally. When you know that it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? When you know the basics are taken care of. I can be free to be friends with someone, right? And then once you have deep knowing with another person, you're actually intimate in conversation and understanding each other, then intimacy flows really naturally. And because there's some difficult conversations to really get the lovers area to be robust and feel like it's thriving. And so to be comfortable in your relationship with each other and really do that strategically really makes that part just naturally happen without feeling so uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, for sure. I love it. So I wrap up every single one of these interviews with the same question, but before we get there, let's get to the important stuff. How do people get a hold of you, start working with you, get more information from you? What's all that stuff?
The website, really, legendarycouples.com. That's our website. Actually, I think our YouTube channel is pretty good.
Our YouTube channel is great. So, for example, like the elements we're talking about, there's one on overview and then one for each one of them on our YouTube channel. We are also on Instagram, legendary.couples. But if you follow my Instagram,
yes, please. I was going to say, Brandy's Instagram is amazing.
I'm the most active on my stories. Okay, but here's what's interesting about my stories. I have become very intentional about sharing my day-to-day on how we stay intentional with all of these things. How do I stay intentional with homeschooling the kids? How do I stay intentional with my marriage? How do I stay intentional with my self-care, right? Taking care of myself in this situation. So I share a lot of that on my stories. And so that's helpful to kind of start to see the rhythm.
Yeah, that's a Mrs. Brandy Salazar.
Yeah, MRS Brandy Salazar.
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll put all that stuff in the show notes. So like I said, I wrap up every single interview with this one question. And since the show is called The Growth Now Movement, my final question is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
I hope we can edit the pause out here, Justin.
Yeah, you're good.
Moment of growth.
Biggest moment of growth.
Ooh.
I think it was the decision for us to sell everything and come to where we are now, because it was the moment where you and I really created core values for us as a couple and for our family. And we took a very courageous and brave step in saying all this fancy shit is not us. And that's okay. Fancy shit is great if,
we like fancy stuff.
We like fancy stuff.
Not at the expense of.
Not at the expense of our relationship and our family. And so I thought that was a huge, courageous step for us to make. And a little quick story about that. I remember we just moved in and we did have a pest control guy come over that had
to this new house.
And he had been at the old house.
Yeah.
And he walks up and he's like, I don't get it, dude. Like, what are you doing? Like, this is like a hovel hole compared to the house that I just treated, like a month ago. And I'm like, I don't know. It's just what we wanted to do, And so he walked around and whatever else, I don't know. And he came back when he was done and he goes, I get it now. I get it. So I think he sensed the adventure. I think he sensed the bravery and the courage in it. And it made me feel very proud in that moment for what we'd done.
Yeah. And I with him. That was the hardest choice that I'd ever made. Everything that we had built was for that moment of having the house, having the cars, having all the stuff, right? Living in a certain neighborhood. And so when you make a decision to say, we're going to walk away from all of this and see if we can be more happy with less stuff and see what happens. There were days I would walk around feeling like I was going to vomit. Really? Yeah. Like I was so scared. I'm like, we're going to ruin our kids. We're going to hate this. I'm going to miss my big kitchen. I'm going to miss our all the things. And then we got here and I was like, never, not once have I missed it.
Don't you guys have chickens now too?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, we do.
They make us breakfast.
Yeah. They drive us crazy sometimes though, but they're loud. They can be loud.
I love it.
Chickens. Yeah. Fostered kittens. We have 2 dogs. Like it's
amazing.
Garden, all the stuff. Yeah.
Our pumpkins are going crazy this year.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Dude, that's amazing. And look, I love what you guys are doing. And I just want to thank you wholeheartedly for taking your scars and allowing them to teach other people and how to fix their wounds. And I think it's something that's needed. I think relationships this day and age, they're very different. It's easier to quit. It's easier to get a divorce. And there's people like you out there saying, look, there's something so much better than just getting a divorce. Yeah. And then you're walking people through. So thank you so much for doing that. Thank you so much for serving. This conversation has been amazing. I'd love for you guys to come back on in the future. This was great. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Justin. This was a fun conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Growth Now movement. This is how you can really help me out. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And let's grow this movement to epic heights. And it's all going to be because of you guys. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next week.